Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Another in our series of what's going on in the community. The city of Chipley has a little bit different schedule for elections than the county does and the rest of the state as far as that goes. And you see this in a lot of municipal governments. Coming up soon is the election for the city of Chipley's city council. With us today is Tommy Sasser. Tommy will be running for the sixth time for the position which he holds on the city council. When we come back, we're going to talk to Tommy about Chipley. We're going to talk a little bit about where we've been, where we're going, maybe what some of our needs are, give you an opportunity in this short segment to learn, maybe in some cases to meet Tommy Sasser, to make your decision. We recommend that people exercise their constitutional vote and make use of the opportunity to vote, but vote from an informed position. Always make sure that you know for whom you're voting and why you're voting for that person. You know, so often elections are based on personality competitions or contests, and it's kind of important to drill down, find out for whom you're voting. Vote responsibly, if you will. When we come back, we're going to talk to Tommy Sasser about all this and more, and we will be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Tommy Sasser, currently the city councilperson for Ward 2 in Chipley, Florida. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Appreciate you having me up.
As I said in the introduction, Tommy, you first ran for office in 2011. And so you're going on 10 years in that position. Ward 2, what section of Chipley is Ward 2?
Okay, Ward 2 is primarily the northeast quadrant of Chipley from the railroad track north and from 5th Street east.
When you're going north on Main Street or Highway 77, where is the city limits of Chipley on the north end?
And as an old resident of Chipley, you have a tendency to say the Ingram House. It's that's where 6th Street veers off of Main Street is about the city limits. Okay.
There is a monument there or a sign that says
Correct.
"Welcome to Chipley," and it's well maintained. It looks good, but I didn't know what that street was. So 6th Street is that intersection.
Correct.
How many residents are there in Chipley, Florida?
The last number that I heard that I could put any faith in was 2,500. I personally think there's a few more than that now, but that would be the number that I would quote.
So roughly 10% of the population of the county is in Chipley. I think that it's arguably accepted that around 25,000 people in Washington County.
Correct.
So about 10% of those people. Obviously, it's the county seat. For those in Vernon, we're not going to go down that road because there's still a lot of sunburn over that situation, although it was a very long time ago. So it's the county seat. It's also the largest municipal area
Correct.
in the county, the largest incorporated area. It shares that title of incorporated or municipal governments with Wausau, Vernon, Caryville, Ebro. And so there's opportunities for growth in Washington County. We could talk about Washington County, but your purview is the city of Chipley. Give me an example of what might be one of our largest concerns when it comes to Chipley. Maybe what one of our largest capital improvements that needs to be, or one of our primary goals. What's one of the things that when you guys get together for a city council meeting always seems to be that topic that you're trying to attack?
Right now, the contract that we have just let for the wastewater disposal, we have a piece of land purchased south of Chipley. The total contract is about $13 million to pipe the water down there and install the spray field. Of course, that doesn't belittle. Everyone remembers the flooding from Hurricane Sally. We have and I'm not sure about a $2.5 million contract or grant right now to improve drainage in the northwest quadrant of Chipley. We're hoping that this prevents any of that. As you well know, the photos of City Hall, we're trying to avoid that.
Oh, it's City Hall, the police department, fire department,
Correct.
the library. There was a lot of construction work that became available, and all of a sudden there were a lot more construction workers that had jobs during that time.
And don't forget the Ag Center also.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting. Their goal was to get it up and running in time for the Watermelon Festival, which is the last full weekend in June, which they did with several weeks to spare. You could argue that some of those buildings were in need of refurbishing, and so maybe they were the beneficiary of that. One heck of a way, and sort of an unpleasant way for that to happen, however.
Yes, the only thing is the loss of use of City Hall, the fire department, the Ag Center. We had to relocate all those jobs to continue city operation. As you know, the city offices moved out to the square south of town, and it worked, but we're still having problems getting the equipment installed back into City Hall.
So is City Hall actually open and functional 100% right now?
It is open and functional. Last week, we had to close the lobby of City Hall because there was some tile work that needed to be done in the lobby. Punch list stuff on the construction that was done there.
Gotcha.
An amazing thing amazing to me, we're having trouble getting office equipment. A desk we're having a hard time getting those. So, and as you probably know, the way desks are made out of particle board, when they get wet, they just disintegrate.
Yeah, they explode.
Yes.
So where exactly is the spray field to which you refer?
Most Washington County residents know where Pike Pond is. It's down Kent Road, below the Pike Pond Road.
Okay. So how large an area is that, roughly?
Okay, when we originally designed it, we designed it for 1.2 million gallons per day. That's the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant. When we applied for the grant, DEP requested that we design for expansion. I didn't understand that, but when they've got the money, you design for expansion. And right now, the spray field is going to cover about 200 acres. But that is about what we have here, but with the difference in the soil types that we're going to, it will take care of the 1.2 million gallon capacity, where the capacity close to Chipley was only at about 700,000 gallons per day.
So obviously this will impact the ability for further development, for new construction.
It will enable further development. Right now we're under consent order by DEP. A subdivision could not be put in within the city limits of Chipley. Now, private residents, they would allow it to be built, but if you're going to build 10 houses on a piece of land, the DEP would not approve that at this time. My primary concern is the commercial properties south of the interstate. Right now, we have water provided for those properties, but if we had a business wanting to go in, we could not tie them into the sewer because of the consent order. And we've talked quite a bit about the spray field. Right now, the projected completion date is a year to a year and a half right now. So,
Of the spray field being in operation?
Correct.
So where is the exact, is the interstate still the southernmost boundary of the city of Chipley going south on 77 or Main Street?
That's one of those, shall we say, technical questions. When the interstate was put in, there was about a 5-acre piece of land that was within the city limits of Chipley on the south side of the interstate. That gave us, I won't say the authority, but the right to annex properties south of the interstate. As of right now, we have not annexed anything down there, but to provide city utilities to those properties, I feel the council would ask them to voluntarily be annexed into the city limits.
Wow, very interesting. I need to get you on more often, running for office or not. At one time, and this is just innuendo, not based on anything that was any official word, but it was somebody jokingly, hopefully, said we were leaking more water in our potable water system in Chipley than what we were actually consuming or what was being sold, because our infrastructure for potable water within the city limits was in such bad condition. I know over time, over the last 15 years, that a lot of that has been addressed. Are there still needs for improvements in that water system?
There are still needs, but just to elaborate a little bit on that, we have just finished a contract, somewhere around $700,000, to replace the water lines in Gilbert Acres and from Glenwood to Warren Avenue, excuse me, on some of those streets in the northwest corner of Chipley.
Okay. So Sprayfield will give you the ability to at least start looking towards development. Looks like you've got a pretty good handle on the water system. What's on the wish list for the Chipley, in this case, the city council? What is the city, when you start talking about windfall money, when you start talking about the opportunities for monies to be able to accomplish things which are on your dream list or your wish list, what kind of things is Chipley looking at?
Okay, right now we're looking and applying for a grant to remove the Mongovan building. As anyone that lives in Chipley knows, if we wait much longer, it'll be sweep it up instead of tear it down. Another thing that we've done, we have a citizens committee that has met concerning the revitalization of downtown. The sidewalks, the shrubbery, the plants in downtown Chipley were put in the early 80s. So it's time that we went back, and there's some problems with the sidewalks. After 40 years, yeah, you're gonna have sidewalks that buckle. We need to look at doing that, making sure everything's ADA compatible, and get the fauna and flora updated to help the appearance of downtown Chipley.
Well, I don't think that you can argue against the fact that we've got a beautiful town. There's opportunities in any environment to destroy that or to lessen that. One way is with a whole bunch of these yard sale signs. I call them the yard sale shaped and sized signs that are used for political and for anything else, a sandwich shop or whatever. And at one time, it was getting pretty littered with those. You know, I don't have a problem with a sign being in the ground if it's functional, but so often these things were laying down. The tire stores were having people drive in with pieces of these metal stakes in their tires from these things being blown around. And with the fact that we get so many hard blows and major storms, every time that happens, these yard sale signs end up in another county or certainly where they don't belong, and they get driven over and they're just a mess. The area there at the railroad tracks and Main Street in particular, beautiful area, the old clock. At one time we had the water tower that was still there, for the Gulf Power water tower in that general area, and it was storybook. And at certain times of the year, Christmas lights, when everything was blooming in the spring, when everything was green in the summertime, we had lots of people, photographers
Yes.
particularly, coming there, taking pictures, and when the special events and parades happened, gorgeous area. I had the fortune of, if you will, of serving on the sign ordinance committee for the city, and we decided basically not to make changes, that we felt that we had ordinances in place which were effective, they just needed to be enforced. And so that's a prime concern for us. My wife and I live in the city limits, and so it's important to us to maintain that beauty. Would you agree with all that?
Oh, yes. And I'm glad you brought up about the signage. One of the comments by the revitalization committee, we'll call it, was maybe even some kind of a directory where the businesses are in downtown Chipley so the people could find them. Matter of fact, we're going to be discussing that at our workshop tonight. And I feel that most of the citizens of Chipley should attend and hear these comments that this committee has made.
We said, you alluded to the Mongovan building. When my wife and I first moved to town, we were in the Dunn building, which is the building just east of the Mongovan building, and we were upstairs and shared a wall, the common wall, with the Mongovan building. Obviously at that time, that building was already in bad repair, had been unused for a while. There was a liability issue. The city finally put a fence around the outskirts and around the sidewalk of the. We had big old pieces of plate glass falling out. But at the end of the day, part of the charm of downtown Chipley are some of these older buildings. But you either have to maintain them or you have to get rid of them. When they're in that in between, then you have the appearance of blight. And in some cases, I would imagine some businesses are looking at our town and going somewhere else because they don't like what they see. We have good areas and bad, just like any other town does. I think you guys have done a pretty good job of maintaining that small town charm, of trying to keep a handle. You know, I could see both sides of the sign ordinance argument. If you're on one of these side streets, like Railroad Avenue, for instance, lots of commercial, the whole street is commercial, but without the ability to have signage, which is visible from Main Street or Highway 77. So you can see both sides of it. How do you make that work? When we were in the Dunn building, which is owned by Dutch and Sophia Schwartz, they actually put up a signage board on the side of the of that building on Main Street that used to be Mary Kay, I think. And let anybody who wanted to put a sign advertising their business. You could argue whether you liked it or not. At the time, it got a lot of positive comments because it allowed people who were driving, who had been to Chipley before, to say, okay, well, there's a sign for it. Let's park here and at least try to find that business that we're looking for.
I remember the sign. Matter of fact, I had a sign on that board. So I thought it was a very good idea. It was kind of a downtown directory. It had a small diagram of the commercial streets in downtown. And I would like to see something like that come back. And I'm hoping that that's what the revitalization committee is talking about. The Mongovan building, 1904 was when it was built. It is a very old building. A lot of the buildings downtown were built out of what they call the old Chipley brick.
That yellow brick?
They don't last. And that's a problem with most of the buildings that you're running into. The CRA has done a fantastic job of helping businesses refurbish their storefronts, electrical refurbishment, you name it, and they've helped people do it. What I'm concerned about right now is a building worth saving? Some of the buildings that they have put a lot of money into, the CRA I'm talking about, either have been torn down or need to be torn down. So, now don't get me wrong, if there's a way to fix one of the downtown buildings, I'm in favor of doing whatever we can to save it. But as we've talked about the Mongovan building, because it's the primary one that needs work to it, it's past saving, and we need to just move ahead with it.
Yeah, I know that at one time there was a spotlight put on the fact that it'd be nice to have residential units on the second floor of some of these downtown buildings. Just as they saw in Panama City, when you have residential areas in the downtown area, it seems to bring another spark of life. There's more people in the area, especially at night. Businesses, restaurants, even retail can justify being open at night, and it seems to be the spark that drives the revitalization of the entire downtown area over time. The problem is that in these buildings that have to be retrofitted with 2-hour firewalls and for mixed use, it's just cost prohibitive. The electrical code improvements alone are phenomenal as far as cost is concerned. And so you're in a situation where you're grandfathered in if you stayed with the same use. These things continue to leak, they continue to deteriorate. There's a lot of buildings downtown that are like that. We're fortunate to live in the world in which we live, and that's the fact that we, as a property owner, you can do what you will with your property, but at some point you hope that people start taking responsibility and realize that somebody's got to start that ball rolling. I know several times people have moved to town with what appeared to be deep pockets, started buying up properties, and for a variety of reasons ended up leaving or going somewhere else, or ended up not being what they were purported to be. But you guys have done a pretty good job of having a handle on that stuff.
Well, CRA, Community Redevelopment Authority, that was originally started in the 80s. It froze the county's tax portion at the levels of that time. The remainder of any increases went into the CRA funds. The CRA has developed various grants to upgrade, as we said, facades, electrical, you name it, and they've just about got a grant for it. They also have a CRA loan that you can apply for. Those are, don't quote me, at one time the interest rate was 2%. Haven't looked at it in the last few days, so it could have changed. But the CRA has been a big force in driving the improvement of some of the buildings downtown.
Yeah, the Vance Theater comes to mind. Main Street Market, Main Street Mercantile, some of these buildings that have taken advantage of those grants and loans. How better to improve than to incentivize the owners through that means, and it attracts a better class of renters then too. It goes without saying, if somebody's paying $2,000 a month instead of $200 a month, chances are their business is going to be maybe of a little bit better. And I hate to use a broad stroke on this, but typically that's going to be probably a better business to have than
more stable.
Probably so. Big question in my mind, right there on the corner across from Main Street Market, there at Main Street and Highway 90, arguably the busiest intersection in this part of Northwest Florida anyway. We took out all of those buildings. What's going on there?
Okay. Those buildings were well on their way to being the Mongovan building of the intersection of Highway 90 and 77. The owners of the buildings made the conscious decision, look, these things are going to fall on somebody, we need to take them down. There's a little bit of controversy on how this thing should be finished up, and the city and the owners are trying to work through that now.
Are they looking at a parking lot or a park or possibly another building? What are the directions they're discussing now?
That I cannot address right now. There's the original request was to take it down and plant grass. I think once they got it down, dollars and cents said, hey, let's just put asphalt over it. And I'm not sure what the outcome will be.
Right. I know that you have issues as far as non-permeable areas of the city, as far as stormwater runoff and all of percolation and all of that goes into it, well outside my pay scale. But it is an interesting situation. I know that going back several years, there was a discussion about a lighted LED type sign, a large commercial sign maybe that would be able to show upcoming events and maybe even advertising of some kind talking about the downtown. I personally was against it then, would still be against it now. Again, we're a little, I like to paint us as a 1950s town. We still have that look about us. And to bring something that would be out of character, like a big LED sign, to me would be destroying or ruining some of that touch. Not my decision to make. Probably not yours at the end of the day either. You're just one of a committee or a council. But I really don't think I'd like to see something space age looking coming into our little old town of Chipley.
Well, and that's, if I'm not mistaken, in reading the recommendations of the Revitalization Committee, it didn't say we need to do this, but it was mentioned in those comments that the committee was making to the council.
I think some signage would be great. I think some opportunity to let people know what's going on, but something that would be a little bit less impactful than an LED sign, I would like to think.
And back to what you said about Mr. Schultz's sign, I thought that was a fantastic idea. Now, they did mention about adding murals and stuff like that. So, hey, the Piggly Wiggly, those paintings that they put on the wall there.
Valencia's train picture on the end of the building over there on Railroad Avenue?
Just a comment about that one. He put that beautiful mural on the old Chipley brick, and if you look at it now, chunks of the brick are falling off.
I gotta say, it kind of adds to its charm. It makes it look like it's 150 years old. You know, instant aging there.
That could be part of it.
Tommy, why do you want to take time away from your business? You're self-employed. You've got a business. Why do you want to take time away from your business to serve on the city council? How do you justify taking time away from friends and family and business to do the city's bidding?
Well, and as with any public official, there's got to be a sense of pride in community, the sense of getting a job completed. As we mentioned, I think, we've been working on the spray field now for 10 to 12 years or longer. And, kind of like to see that one finished so that we can expand the businesses into the city of Chipley. There are some of the codes. One that always gets talked about this time of the year is the fireworks. Noise ordinances, fireworks. We have had problems in the past with people abusing fireworks and had serious problems with it. It's just a miracle we didn't have some serious injuries on some of it. These are the kind of things that I want to work on and see if we can find a solution, whether it be the flooding from Hurricane Sally, make sure that does not ever happen. The drainage in Chipley, when it was originally planned 100 years ago, it worked, it was great. But by the time everyone added a feeder ditch to it, it was overloaded. And to a large degree, that's the main problem we have, is good ideas from 100 years ago. And all we can do is try to stay after it and keep everything working for the city of Chipley. One thing that I do want to mention about the spray field, as I said, it's anywhere from $13 to $15 million. Okay, the sewer rates right now are higher than they've ever been. There is a increase for the cost of living built into our sewer rates. We did not need any additional rate increase because of the new spray field. Through creative financing, refinancing some of the existing loans we had with USDA and grants, we were not required to increase the city sewer rates because of the new spray field. You know, there are a couple of projects that we have that we are installing, the splash pad. That's been an area of concern and rub for the last 3 or 4 years. We have been approved for the grant to get started on that. Now keep in mind, getting approved for a grant, it could be 6 months before we see any funds out of that.
So don't put your bathing suit on yet.
Yeah, correct. If we can have it operational by the end of next summer, I would call that good. So, you know, there's a lot of projects we've got in progress that I would like to see completed. And one comment that I would like to make, regardless of what you think of the City Council's operation, I encourage everyone to vote on August 3rd. Historically, the turnout for the city's elections have only been anywhere from 300 to 500 people. I would like to see at least 1,000 citizens of Chipley express their opinion and tell us what they want to do.
And I'm glad that you said that, because that was one thing I was going to address. Universally, looking around, whether it's been on a county level or a municipal level, there's been a real sense of apathy when it's come to election time, and voter turnout has been very, very poor. In the case of Chipley, almost every seat has been unopposed over the last several election cycles.
Correct.
You first ran in 2011, and I don't think you've had an opponent in that last 10 years, have you,
No.
of the other elections? And the same has been the case with almost everybody else in those positions. And Chipley is not doesn't have a franchise on that. The same thing is true in Wausau and in Vernon, and I don't know about Caryville and Ebro, but possibly there as well. So that's concerning. Not that you feel better if there are more people running, but that sense of involvement definitely needs to be there. That's why we always start off the show telling people to vote, but vote responsibly and to do their homework. To what do you attribute the fact that there just seems to be that low voter turnout?
I don't know as I can address the apathy in the city elections. I've had conversations, well, why don't we have them, you know, in conjunction with some of the county elections? And you run into, well, who's paying for the election, who's doing this, who's doing that? And it just would not work to have it in conjunction with a county election or
Understood.
state.
Understood.
So, but I've always voted in the city elections because you can't complain if you haven't spoken. And casting your ballot is one way of speaking. So, you know, I would hope that, hey, we said there was between 2,500 and 3,000 people in the city. I would love for it to be 2,000 votes cast, regardless of who it's for.
Well, strictly my opinion, I think right now that you have a great mayor at the helm. I think that the police department, partially originally forged by Kevin Cruz, who then moved on to sheriff, and now under the auspices of Scott Thompson, doing good things. Community relationships seem to be at an all-time high. Our fire department with Floyd Aycock and his crew over there. All of the services are just, to me, very, very much more than adequate. They're all excelling. I know that takes money. What kind of improvements have you seen over the last 10 years to that infrastructure?
Okay, to a large degree, improvements are funded by grants. Day-to-day operations are funded by city funds. The last time I talked with Chief Thompson, he had found a grant it was a shared grant where he could buy 3 vehicles, shall we say, for the price of one. That's a deal in anybody's book. Most people don't realize that even though they operate in the city, some of those vehicles he's got have got 200,000 miles on them.
They don't sit still long.
Yeah. Chief Aycock, he has been trying for a grant for a new fire truck for the last 3 years that I know of. Mr. Cook at the wastewater treatment plant, he's dealing with a lightning strike right now, replacing wiring, replacing pumps, the whole 9 yards. Some of the maintenance side under Mr. Lane, we've been using corrections personnel to do some of the mowing and cleaning of the city properties. We have let a lot of that to contract. We have found that you can let it to contract for the price of just a little over a full-time employee, and then you don't have to waste. You're not wasting it. You don't have to keep up the equipment, and the job still gets done.
Running a city, a municipal organization such as Chipley is just like managing a very large business. Any corporate entity requires day-to-day maintenance, influx of cash, capital improvements, HR, and all that goes into the employee structure. Hats off to you and your fellow council people for doing that job so well in Chipley. I'm convinced that eventually we're going to see major growth in this area. I think that we live in a small pocket of sanity, and you don't have to go far to see some of the craziness going on all around us, politically and otherwise. And I think that we're very fortunate to live where we do, and we're fortunate to have people such as yourself. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
I appreciate you having me in.
One thing that was very obvious to me is that I need to have you on more often, regardless of the outcome of this election. You've got a lot of insight as somebody who was in the field originally, and then as a former military person, you've got a structure about you, and you're able to explain things where even somebody who's challenged like I am can understand. So again, thank you for taking the time. Best of luck coming up in the election. What is the date of your election?
As I stated before, everyone come out and vote August the 3rd for the City Council Ward 2 election.
So that's the first Tuesday in August?
Yes.
Is that correct? Again, best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Our guest today has been Tommy Sasser, currently the Ward 2 City Councilperson for the city of Chipley, Florida, in which we find ourselves today. If you've not been to Chipley, check it out. It's a beautiful place to live, to raise a family, to retire, and I hope to get to the point where I can do just that one day soon. We'll be right back.